All right, real quick, sort of a grapes report on what was going on in Europe about the time all the colonization started, about the time of Age of Discovery, when that was kicking off. This is what Europe looked like, the different kingdoms that were going on there. France, Spain, Portugal. Remember, those were the big ones. Spain and Portugal especially, they were the big ones during the Age of Exploration. During colonization, we're going to look at France, England, another one up here, Holland as well. The Netherlands, the Dutch, they went all over the place during this time as well. Holy Roman Empire wasn't really an empire. It was more of a confederation of all the German-speaking city-states that were happening. Denmark, Norway, Sweden. The Scandinavian colonization had ended by this time, but Sweden still got in a colony in North America as well. Ireland didn't really go anywhere. Scotland, England, of course, is where we came from, where we pull our heritage from. Moving on, see the United States here, North America. Europe is over here, nearly the same latitude. We'll do that in the next slide as Canada, northern U.S. It's where we live here, Tampa, Florida. This is Lisbon, Portugal. Remember, the Portuguese under Henry the Navigator were the ones that really kicked off the exploration, the Age of Exploration, and then later to follow the colonization. All right, geography, climate, roughly the same landmass as the U.S. It's a temperate climate, meaning they have seasons, unlike us here in Florida, where we just have about 2 weeks of it's kind of chilly a little bit, and then the rest of the time it's hot. So you can kind of see this here. Here's England, Scotland, Ireland, Scandinavia up here. Here's Spain, Portugal. Underneath, this is the United States overlaid over onto Europe. You can see here all these plain states where we have really good fertile soil, get decent amounts of rain. It's where all our big mega farms are, kind of the breadbasket of America, breadbasket of the world. You can see at that same latitude, that's the Mediterranean Sea underneath here in Europe. So where we have a lot of really good farmland, they've got nothing but open ocean. Oh yeah, I put this here, this to kind of show you. Medieval warm period, this was when the Scandinavian colonization, the Vikings, they were cruising around up here, Iceland, Greenland, came over here into North America a little bit. They came from this area up here. And that's this medieval warm period. You see these temperatures, they're above the baseline, above the average. It was really warm at that time, not a lot of ice pack going on, which is good because the Viking boats didn't handle the ice pack very well. And then it started getting cold. This Age of Exploration, remember 1492, Columbus, 1500, there was a spike. There was a spike in the weather, got a little warmer, and then it just got really cold for a little while in the Little Ice Age. And then, of course, we're coming out of it now out here, and we're starting to warm up again. So what happened here, we had the Black Death, the bubonic plague, all of that going on. A lot of people died, and then of course it starts getting colder, so crops are failing, and a lot of people are dying from famine at that time as well. Something like a quarter to a third of the European population died off just in these few years, this 100 years before the Age of Exploration really kicked out. Landforms, we got the Alpine areas, that's here, that's the Alps. The Italian, the Swiss Alps, a lot of high ground. Central uplands is good for like dairy farms. You can run cows on them, can't really do a whole lot of crops. Now see here, the northern lowlands, these northern lowlands, these are their farming areas. It's where you got a lot of good farmland. However, remember, it's starting to get cold. So because all the good farmland was up north, and it started getting cold, they lost a lot of those crops, and they didn't have shipping across time zones, across temperate zones. So if you didn't have that crop that year, you were dying. And then Western Highlands over here, Western Highlands, those are good for like sheep and goat and stuff like that. Not real good for crop, but good for animal grazing. All right, natural resources. We had a lot of iron, copper, silver, but these mines are getting depleted. They've been digging out those mines since Roman times for about 1,500 years. They'd been digging out those mines, and they were hitting the edge of their technology. The mines are filling up with water. They didn't have any way to get the water out of the mines, and everything else had been mined out. Not a lot of copper, not a lot of silver, not a lot of iron anymore. Crops, oops, back up. Crops, barley, wheat, oats, rye. You know, that's all the kind of stuff you make bread with. But they're not big like a corn cob. It's fairly big. Pull off a little wheat, you got about that much. You can't just eat it directly. You got to do something else with it. Not like the Americas. And remember, most of that land is up here, and it's getting cold. So those crops are kind of going away too. Religion, Catholicism, we'll talk a little bit more about this. But the religion pretty much permeated the entire society from top down. They were all religious. There was some Reformation going on, but for the most part, especially the big three, France, Spain, and Portugal, they were highly Catholic at this time. All right, achievements, things that were going on. Right, this is the late medieval period, also called the Renaissance. It was a rebirth in knowledge. They went back in time. They started looking at the ancient Greeks with the Ottoman Empire, and especially after the Crusades. They had more access to the Muslim and Arabian libraries, which actually saved all those Greek works that were lost after the Roman Empire fell. So going back, you know, rebirth in everything, every field. Leonardo da Vinci, he was real big on anatomy, studying the human form, just like the ancient Greeks were. This is the time of Bach. Should look him up to listen to what kind of music that is. It's what we might consider classical music. It's actually more Baroque, but it's neither here nor there. It's for music nerds. But it's a high level of performance. It's concert music, high level performance. It's not just church music like it used to be. They're doing concerts. They're going out in public and doing this. Printing press was invented around 1440. Books are getting published in mass. Before that, they had some simple wood block cuttings, but most books were written by hand and copied by hand. Now they can mass produce them. Along with that, you have great libraries being built, and the rich folk would commission books, commission entire libraries, have them built, and then anybody that could read was welcome to come in and study in those libraries. They were open to the public. They weren't private libraries, privately built, but open to the public. Around this time, you got Chaucer. He was a big poet. He a lot of stories. Shakespeare as well, poet. A lot of stories, and these were Shakespeare's plays. They were designed to be consumed by the masses. Like they had, it was general audience, general admission. Anybody could just come in. Copernicus and Galileo, they were studying the stars. They were studying the motions of the planets. If you remember from the astronomy block, they big mathematicians. They challenged the hierarchy. They challenged conventional wisdom that the sun revolved around the earth, and they said no, the earth revolves around the sun. And there was a lot of inventions, especially in the way of sails. We talked about that with the explorers, the sails and the compass and the rudders themselves allowed people to get out and about and around. So all of that's going on. A lot of high-minded individuals, a lot of technological advancements, entertainment advancements, a lot more leisure time. At the same time, people are basically starving and it's starting to get cold. We won't listen to that today. All right, politics. This is also the rise of an absolute monarch. Prior to this, there were kings, but the kings just kind of controlled their own little region, like their own little city state. Like we would have a king of Tampa, Florida, and we would have a king of Sarasota, Florida, that kind of thing. And then all the little towns like Brandon and Bradenton, they would be out there kind of on their own. There wasn't like a king of Florida, to put it in Floridian terms. But with the rise of the nation state, that meant people, they felt a belonging to the nation itself. Like this is the first time that people actually felt like they were English and not Northumbrians or West Essexians. Um, they actually considered themselves all English. Politics, if you get into any kind of poli sci, Machiavelli comes up quite a bit. He wrote a book called The Prince, and that was about how you get power and you hold power, and how you treat the peasants, how you treat the court, how you manipulate the court to get what you want, that kind of stuff. So it was a kind of a scientific study of how to be a king or how to be a prince. The economy, we had trade routes going all over this. Remember in that first map, we had the Ottoman Empire over here. We talked about that during the Age of Exploration. What really kicked that off was the Ottoman Empire cut off trade into the east, going over into Asia. So everybody had to start coming around, right? They had to go around to Africa, or they had to look to go west to go east. But there was a lot of trade, and it was starting to get cut off. Also during this time, remember I said the mines, they're about played out. The mines are depleted. There isn't a whole lot of money that can be found any longer, and no more bullion. And what gold and what silver they had was going east. The Ottoman Empire, they choked off trade and they set up ports, and you could only buy it straight from those ports. Very little internal trade with coins, with money. It was a lot of trading. It was a lot of bartering. They just traded straight for goods. At the same time, mercantilism was rising up, but that's an economic theory that relies on finite resources. Like there's only enough gold. There's only so much gold in the world, and once that runs out, that's it. So you try to consolidate all of that into your power. So the mines are played out. They don't have a lot of gold. Come over the New World, all of a sudden they find silver mines, they find gold mines, gold just lying around, people using gold for earrings and don't know that it's valuable, that kind of thing. So there's a big rush to go find more of that, because all of a sudden there's an influx of wealth that they used to believe at one time was finite. All right, society. This is big graphic here. Big takeaway down here. Gotta let this move. Big takeaway here is that this is what's called the Great Chain of Being. It's right down here on the bottom. Snow can't sneak up there. At the bottom of that pyramid, it says the Great Chain of Being, and it's a strict hierarchy. It's what most Europeans believe. Remember, I said most Europeans are stuck under the church, and even the Protestant Reformation. They still believed in a strict hierarchy. They just no longer believed that the Catholic Church was the way to go. But they had this hierarchy where God is the top, and then here, angelic beings and stuff, heavenly beings, and then the king is God's emissary on earth to those specific people. So the King of France, he's God's emissary on earth to the French, and England to the English and stuff. And church, princes, nobles, man, right? Now remember, this is very Eurocentric. So as they go out into the world, any new peoples they meet are going to fall into that hierarchy underneath. That's just the way their hierarchy went. They'd still be above animals. They were still men, but they would be below European men. So that came into play not just in their own societies, but as they went out and started meeting other societies as well. All right, so remember, all that stuff is going on, all that fancy art, all that fancy music, all those brand new books getting put up everywhere, and yet people are still living in barns. This is a typical house that would represent one of these houses here. This is a manorial system where the manor, the lord of the manor, he would live up here up on the high spot. And this would be his fields out here. One of the things to note is that everybody in town worked those fields. They would go out and plant, and they would go out and harvest, and then in between, they would go back to their own trades. Guy would be a blacksmith, guy would be a baker, guy would be a tanner, you know. But during planting and harvest, they were all out there picking up that food because they all needed that food. Something to note, children didn't really have a childhood at about 12 years old. Even before that, they were getting traded off to the black, you know, they might go to the blacksmith to learn how to be a smith. And in return, you might get a couple of coins or something, but you were learning a trade. You weren't going to school. That was your school. The houses. This is after the invention of the chimney, which might even come a little later than this. Prior to that, without the chimney, they just had right here in the middle of the house, they would have an open fire pit and then an open roof, big hole in the roof up here where the smoke would go out. They got their bed right next to the animal food. And they got chickens in here, so they were in there cooking every night. They'd bring in the animals. You know, they had sheep or pigs or chickens or cows or whatever. They were in there sleeping together. They lived in a barn, and that close proximity to livestock like that. That's where they ended up getting a lot of the diseases that they had and then carried over into the New World. All right, that's it. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments.